Thank you.
The classes of vanilla.
Oh, let's read the title of this. Unknown facts lost to time for every class vanilla WoW. Okay. And unknown facts. Let's see if we know any of these facts, okay?
The World of Warcraft went through so many changes during the alpha and beta stages of the game.
So right here, guys, we have the Shaman Tier 1 set from Molten Core. This is the Paladin Tier 2 set from Blackwing Lair with the Ash Candy right there. We have the Priest Dungeon set. I believe that is the Tier 0.5 dungeon set. I might be wrong, though. We have the Rogue Tier 3 with the Hungering Cold and Gretzel Dawn of Ruin. That is from Naxxramas, of course. This is the Hunter Tier 2, I believe. We got the Druid Tier 1 right there. And then also the Tauren Male Warrior, also with the Hungering Cold and wearing Tier 3.
After all, Blizzard had already made so many spells during the Warcraft RTS games that they had...
I'm not pausing every 2 seconds, guys. Listen, I have so much content to do today. I can't be wasting time pausing the video all the time. So please let me do my reacts. I appreciate it. Alright, so this looks like it's Warcraft 1. I don't know, actually. I never played Warcraft 1. Or
some good ideas in place that just needed to now fit into a class-based system for the MMORPG instead. Some of the spells which you see in-game are direct copies from the RTS games, whether they're used by NPCs or players, and some of them are totally new additions to the WoW universe. Today I want to talk about some very early experimentations that were...
This is the old login screen, right, chat, for Vanilla WoW. I don't know, this kind of is really cool. I don't know why they don't have this in Classic, right? This is badass.
During the WoW alpha and beta stages of the game, and to just show you how different classes could have been if Blizzard decided to go in.
What the hell is this, man? Wait, is that the old Tauren model? That looks so fried. Ain't no
a different
way.
Direction. All of these are from old WoW databases showing spells or abilities which used to exist in the game's files, but were ultimately decided not to be used or were changed to make them different from any live ability.
Yo guys, stop counting how many times I've paused the video. It's making me pause the video more. I'm trying to react here. Please, I'm doing my job.
So they'll all have the ZZ old prefix in front of their name to push them to the bottom of the search engine, so they wouldn't be used by mistake during development. I've taken a few abilities which have more detailed descriptions for every single one of Vanilla's classes, and there is some real obscure stuff here which I had not heard of whatsoever till I started looking into this. So let's make a start and talk about some more unknown abilities that were lost to time in Vanilla World of Warcraft. But first, a quick word from today's sponsor, Crystal of Outland. Crystal of Outland is a brand new cross-platform Magic Punk MMO action RPG where you can get ahead by pre-registering now to claim
I actually was gonna get sponsored by this game, but I said no because I was gonna be at TwitchCon. Not even trolling, by the way.
Exclusive rewards and unlock early access. During the pre-registration milestone event, tons of rewards will become available as the game grows, and once the 8 million milestone trip is costing me a lot more money. Legends Return outfit and so much more. Crystal of Outland offers fluid, responsive combat where the player can chain together combinations of abilities and satisfying gameplay. This combat system extends into the air with unique aerial mechanics, adding a vertical layer that brings something new to the typical MMORPG combat style. From the start, multiple classes are already available, each featuring over 20 skills for flexible and personalized gameplay. There's also multiplayer content too, which includes cooperative dungeons and a guild fleet system, encouraging teamwork within the game and grouping up with others in the world. This is all set in an extensive world where magic meets technology. Players will explore ancient ruins, uncover long-lost secrets, and face powerful enemies as they journey through Outland. So check the link in the description to get a start and get ahead now by pre-registering for Crystal of Outland today to be in for a chance for in-game and real-life rewards. Many thanks to Crystal of Outland for sponsoring today's video. I'm not promoting this for free. I'm respecting the Paladins were perhaps the single most changed class from alpha all the way to release. For real, I could probably make a full video with just the differences on this single class, and maybe I should. Let me know if you want to see that.
I would love to watch it on my stream.
Did you know that Paladins' blessings used to be quite different, and even more short duration than they currently are? Blessing of Righteousness bears some familiarity name-wise to what we all know nowadays as Seal of Righteousness.
Place a blessing on the friendly target, increasing attack power by 370 against undead enemies. Lasts for 25 seconds. Oh my god, bro. That would have been so bad. I'm glad this didn't make it to the game. Like I mentioned, buffing warriors every 25 seconds. Actually, you would have to buff multiple warriors. Oh. Yeah, that's good thing they didn't do this.
But this version was much more different. Here at max rank, it will place a blessing on a friendly target, increasing their attack power against undead enemies by a pretty massive 370 for 25 seconds. Imagine having this buff actually existing during Naxxramas, for example. If this existed, each warrior, or, you know, just physical damage dealer in general, would have had a paladin assigned to them specifically.
That's what I just said. Dude, it's almost like he knew I was gonna say. Like, I just said that. See, I didn't pre-watch this, guys. I didn't pre-watch, but I said that, so...
Blessing of Righteousness up every 25 seconds. Talk about buff bot gameplay. Speaking of attack power buffs, there used to be different auras in the game as well, such as Dominance aura, that has the same icon.
I'm pausing, I just want to... Can I read? It's okay to pause to read this, right? Increases attack power of all party members within 30 yards by 130. Oh, it's literally a aura. Wait, why did this get removed? That's actually really good. Those are having like Sanctity Aura, 10% holy damage. No one cares about that. 130 attack power. That would have made Paladins a lot more viable. They should have kept this.
Connor's Blessing of Might. However, this was a more offensive aura, whereas auras on live all tend to be defensive, apart from Retribution aura, but that is a special aura found in the Ret tree. This maximum rank of Dominance aura provided 130 attack power for all party members within 30 yards of the Paladin. Again, as a physical DPS player, you would have absolutely wanted this. In fact, this gives 30 more attack power than the maximum rank of the Marksman Hunter's True Shot aura, and that's a capstone talent. So this just being part of the old Paladin's toolkit would have been kind of crazy. Overall, Paladins are already good nowadays for the various buffs they bring, but they could have been even better. Warrior used to have some crazy abilities which got toned down over time. One such example is Power Stance, which says that it increases critical strike chance by 100% for 10 seconds after it's used.
That's
so I read
old
this as you use Power Stance, and then you get one guarantee crit on your next ability, which would have made Warrior into much more of a stancing class, where you'd be cycling through this ability every time your hardest hitting abilities were coming off of cooldown. However, as far as I know, Warriors still lost all rage by default when changing stances, and this was even true back then. So even if you kept 25 rage through the Tactical Mastery talent in the arms tree, this still would have felt a bit clunky to play with. Also, you definitely wouldn't have been constantly rage capped spamming Heroic Strike as you can nowadays with all your Consumes and Well buffs. So as cool as this ability sounds, you can probably tell why it was changed. The second ability is an interesting one called Spellbreak that had 2 ranks. At rank 1 it cost what I'm assuming is 25 rage. These old databases often convert resources to mana by default, so don't worry about that too much. Anyways, for 25 rage, this allowed the warrior with no cooldown to free themselves from one harmful magical effect. This would have completely changed how warrior felt in PvP, especially against the likes of Frost Nova from mages, Entangling Roots from druids, and so on. If you were fighting versus a warrior, you'd have to be sure to have...
Yeah, but guys, it costs mana because he just said all these spells cost mana on like the thing. You didn't pay attention to what he said. I'm pausing to explain to you. It's just like a thing. Well, obviously, warriors don't have mana. Right.
Some kind of debuff protection active such as Fairy Fire or Detect Magic. At rank 2 of Spellbreak it would remove 2 spells instead, but it appears as though the rage cost has been increased to 75, which to be honest is probably too high to make it all that useful. At that point just use a free action potion, they're not that expensive, or use rank 1 twice. Cool ability all the same that would have added a degree of self-sufficiency to the warrior, which they're otherwise lacking in vanilla, but ultimately it didn't make it to live. Shaman's Ghost Ghost Wolf appears as though it could have worked in one pretty big different way during the early stages of WoW. This tooltip shows a Ghost Wolf rank 2, which turns a friendly target into a Ghost Wolf, increasing their movement speed by 100% for until cancelled. Now the until cancel bit would have been a bit problematic for actually getting long-term use out of this spell as somebody benefiting from it, because we're talking about vanilla WoW here, and you can't interact with NPCs for quests and so on whilst you're shapeshifted into any animal form. You can't expect everyone to talk wolf now, can you? But for those long journeys your character takes, such as Undercity down to Arathi Highlands, or the first trip from Gromgrol in STV over to Kargath in the Badlands, this would have come in pretty clutch. I mean, I'll pay a few gold for this buff so I could zoom wherever I needed to be at epic mount speed. The only problem is, of course, it's magic dispellable, so you'd have to watch out for priests and so on. The second thing I found is Lightning Shock. This is very reminiscent of Earth Shock, but also combines a mini purge effect into it as well, dispelling one magical effect, on top of having very good base damage.
Good thing that didn't
Some
make it
NPCs in the game do still have a variation of this spell, but I think they got rid of the dispel part of it altogether. Still, this would have been a powerful instant cast ability just to throw out on cooldown against any class which relied on magical buffs. Hunter used to have some pretty wild abilities at their disposal too. One of them was Silencing Shot. This was an instant cast shot that silenced their target for 8 seconds. I don't think I need to say how unfun this would have been to play against as a caster, seeing as in vanilla there isn't really much you can do about being silenced unless you are a mage or paladin.
It doesn't say there's a CD, but that's probably like a data mining bug, right? Like, I would guess it had a CD.
And can immune it off. This ability was later added back into the marksmanship tree in TBC as a new capstone talent. However, it only silenced for a much more reasonable 3 seconds as opposed to this version. But as you know, in vanilla, Blizzard just loved CC being incredibly long, both against NPCs and players. Another shot that was cut from the Hunter was called Sniper Shot. This is basically a super buffed version of aim shot in all aspects. At max rank, it was a 5-second cast with a 60-yard base range that would cause weapon damage plus 100. Imagine how fun this would have been to use playing as a hunter in AV, defending towers and bunkers and so on. You could have even added on top the Hawkeye talent in the marksmanship tree to give this a total of a 66-yard range. Back in the day when you could get Grand Marshal weapons for just a bit of honor during TBC, I'd spend a whole lot of time lurking off to the side in AV and just trying to one-shot people with aim shot on my hunter. If there was sniper shot, it would have made this so much more fun. Or the same as fun as it would have been for the hunter, similar to silencing shot, there's not really much counterplay you can have against this. You just have to line the sight or somehow get out of range in time. But if a night elf popped out of shadow meld and started charging this up, you better brace for impact. Druid is up next, and the first ability I have is called Scout Form. Now this very well could have just been an early version or name of travel form, which enables you to get around faster before you have a mount. But it also could have served more stealthy purposes. First of all, there's no movement speed modifier on this ability as travel form should have had, and the tooltip shows a very harmless, cute looking animal. So perhaps Scout Form was more shapeshifting into a harmless looking critter that would go unnoticed by enemies, so you could, well, scout and infiltrate their ranks. I mean, technically you could still do this with Cat Form and Prowl, which might have been why this was removed, but some enemies can still see through stealth, and players tend to with enough detection or being close to them or with difference in combat levels. Scout Form is more trying to hide in plain sight and acting like an NPC, or at least that's the way I interpret it. It appears as though at one point Blizzard were considering giving druids in vanilla their iconic Cyclone ability as well. Now of course this was another addition to the game that was brought in for the Burning Crusade, with it resembling this base version very closely, in that it made the target unable to act or be harmed, but in TBC it was a much shorter duration CC. This being the vanilla version, obviously it lasted for 30 seconds, and it's basically Banish that worked on players, which as you can imagine would not have been very fun to play against in any way whatsoever, especially when it would have been spammable, and at least according to this, instant cast for some reason. Talk about a get out of any situation possible for free card for the druid here. This would have been overpowered beyond belief for resetting combat in PvP. Some NPCs in the game did inherit this ability in vanilla, you may have seen it when you're leveling, but for them it stuns you and often breaks when you take damage. This first version of
that mob is actually a rare mob called Hurricane.
Cyclone though appears as though it will be too strong even for vanilla. Rogue next, and I found some good ones for this class too. First up is a poison simply named Paralyzing Poison, which had a chance on hit to stun the target for 3 seconds.
Why would they do this?
Now this may seem as though it's just going to grief some of your other stun related effects such as Cheap Shot and put them on diminishing returns, but Kidney Shot is on its whole own diminishing return in vanilla, so this really would have been a pretty effective, albeit random weapon poison to use. I mean, rogues are already known for their crazy levels of CC in vanilla, where between abilities, cooldowns, and items, they can stop somebody else from playing the game for over a minute, and that is not an exaggeration. So Paralyzing Poison would have added a bit more flexibility to their rotation and CC chain. Maybe this procs and lets you spend a bit more energy before your next CC, or it enables you to escape when you thought you were out of options. Here is another ability, and a familiar one too, Expose Armor, or should I say the old Expose Armor. So the version we ended up getting in Classic reduced a flat amount of armor and could be improved by talents to make it more effective. However, it used to be different. The old Expose baseline at 5 combo points for 25 energy would reduce the target's armor by 40%.
That's how it is in other versions of WoW,
seconds. And I even found an old talent linked to this where its armor reduction could be improved to 45%. Now, to be honest, if you look up the armor values of bosses, this wouldn't have always been better than the armor reduction effects which exist today, but against enemies with very high base armor, this percentage decrease would have been very powerful. Mage had some rather questionable abilities early on in WoW, and one of them was Mage Armor, or should I say the old Mage Armor, because of course this spell exists in vanilla. However, the old version was a 3-second cast with a 30-minute duration for 110 mana that prevented the first 60 physical damage from harming the caster. So from the wording, it's not entirely clear how this would have worked. If it's just consumed by the first physical attack, then this is terrible. I mean, it would be barely even worth using. But if it straight up reduces physical damage taken by 60 for 30 minutes, that would especially when it says the first 60 physical damage, then this suddenly becomes very, very overpowered. Another way of describing this ability will be any enemy that deals 60 physical damage or less cannot harm the mage. And say if you're boosting or doing large pulls of enemies that all do a small amount of damage, this is going to massively reduce your damage taken. I've done a lot of Paladin AoE farming in vanilla, where of course you have Blessing of Sanctuary active that reduces damage taken by 24 at max rank, and it is extremely noticeable if it ever drops off for a few seconds. You just take so much more damage. So believe me, having a flat 60 damage mitigated would have been incredibly overpowered in the right circumstance. Mages also used to have a different long form CC ability other than Polymorph called Sleep. This ability was briefly changed from Priest to Mage and then back to Priest before being deleted, and the Mage ultimately ended up with their iconic Polymorph ability instead. One key difference in Sleep is that...
So this is like instead of Polymorph, and then they gave them Polymorph, and we're gonna have Sleep and Polymorph, right?
It would not cause the target to regenerate health quickly whilst under its effect.
But this is better though.
Stronger than Polymorph would have been. Either way, Blizzard settled on the Polymorph spell for mages in vanilla, and Sleep remains a spell that you see now and again on certain NPCs. Next is Warlock, starting off with a curse effect which definitely bordered on being too powerful. This was called Crippling Curse. It had a 10-second duration and slowed the target's movement speed by 60% and their attack speed by 50% for 10 seconds.
A lot of
this would of
NPCs
course
have
completely destroy any physical damage during focus quest at the press of a button, and I imagine it served as a counterpart to Curse of Tongues to debuff casters. It was probably simply too powerful though versus melee, and as a result I think this was divided up into quite a few different spells that we do find in vanilla, such as Curse of Weakness, Curse of Exhaustion in the Affliction tree, and Cripple, which is an ability that Doom Guards often have in vanilla. Here's another cool spell which I kind of wish was iterated on a bit more, called Mind Bomb. I reckon this is a Warlock spell because A, it's got the Fell Hunter spell lock icon, and B, it's a Shadow School spell. Saying that, priests usually have mind related abilities, so I'm not 100% sure, but we're gonna go with Warlock here. This was an instant cast spell that would attach a Mind Bomb to the target, and if the target cast a spell within 1 minute, they would take 200 damage. Also, this was just single target damage, it wasn't AoE, despite the name Bomb often implying that. that. Now 200 damage isn't much, but this was rank 1 of the spell and there were no other ranks listed. Still, it's dealing damage for free that's instant cast versus anyone that wants to use spells in the game. Imagine applying your dots to a mage and then just sitting there spamming Mind Bomb like you're telling them to stop hitting themselves in the face. I don't know, that sounds kind of fun to me. Last one I've got for you is the Priest, and there's some really interesting stuff here. First up is what appears to have been a talent called Improved Resurrection, which says reduces the resurrection sickness penalty of your resurrection spell by 25%. So this implies at one point being res by a healer at all would have in fact applied resurrection sickness. This would have made dying at any point ever in World of Warcraft super frustrating. Imagine your tank dies in a dungeon, then you res them with this talented ability, and then they still have 7 minutes of resurrection sickness to AFK through before they're actually effective at playing the game again. I think it was for the best that it was.
Yo guys, spirit. When we say no changes, right, we want this in the game, right? So no changes, people. I hope you guys are okay with getting rest and then having rest sickness for 10 minutes. No changes.
Healers who applied this debuff after you used them to resurrect, instead of it just being a blanket effect that's applied to all resurrections in the game. I also found this curious little ability named Holy Escape. This appears to kind of be life grip, but AoE. So it says it costs 200 mana, 5-second cast, and it would teleport 5 units within a 30-yard radius. So in other words, you could have maybe had a group of 5 people, and the priest could have just teleported you somewhere nearby with no cooldown. I'm not sure if you would just be teleported 30 yards in the direction that the priest is facing, or whether you could choose where you will be teleported to, but this ability would have so many use cases. Imagine if a priest just wholly escapes you past certain trash mobs in a dungeon so you can get to a boss faster, or for climbing up areas where you're not really supposed to go in the game. This is without a doubt one of the most interesting old abilities that I've found, but I reckon it was removed simply because I bet it would have caused so many problems for Blizzard to balance around this spell's existence, so they just couldn't make it work in the end. And that's it, just a few abilities that your class could have potentially had in a different version of World of Warcraft. Let me know if you want to see more content like this, or perhaps for me to go more in depth on a class by class basis.
How about that, bro? Give me a react rating there. So like from 0 to Zaryu, how good of a job did I do that? All right, I only had 18 pauses. I actually gave some good input, you know. Zero. There's no way. 8. Okay, I'll take an 8. One guy said 8, 3, 4 out of 10, 0.2. All right. It's fine, guys. That was our warm-up video. We got one more video we're going to watch, and then we get into some gameplay, okay? And this one is going to be a lot more interesting. We have, does the Burning Crusade need fixing?
The Burning Crusade.
All right, another video from WoW here. One more. Yeah, and this time I cannot pause the video more than 20 times. All right? That's how it works. Okay, actually, I'll tell you what. I'll sell out, so I can only pause this video based on how many subs I get during the video. So if I get no subs, then I can't pause it. So if you guys want to buy pauses, all you have to do is sub.
Crusade will re-release once again after vanilla ends on Anniversary Realms. This will probably take place around late 2025 to early 2026, but that is still to be confirmed. Vanilla itself and Anniversary just got Phase 4 on May 1st, which is Zul'Gurub. This means it has 2 major raid tiers left to go through, an AQ as well as an Naxxramas. And I've already seen a lot of people building up hype for WoW's first expansion and getting excited to go through the Dark Portal once again and see how it all played out. But should the Burning Crusade match how everything was the first time around it re-released in 2021? Or this time around, should some things be different? Because it's worth a note that since the Burning Crusade's first classic release, there are now so many more different versions of WoW that exist in an official capacity, such as there being seasonal realms with season.
Yo, thanks for the subs, by Norcro. I appreciate the gift this up to Asmongold, and the Limb of Kings with the tier 1. Welcome in. Thank you. All right.
Of Discovery or Hardcore WoW as well, so I want to talk a bit about them too and whether they could work for the Burning Crusade. It is still well in advance of TBC releasing, but that's the best time to be talking about these things and asking these kinds of questions. So we'll be talking about the good, the bad, and how likely it is to actually happen for Burning Crusade seasonal realms, TBC Hardcore, and modifications to the base TBC game, in addition to those made during its first classic release in 2021. But first, I want to share with you another MMORPG from the past that's just been totally revamped, Ragnarok X. Having just officially released, Ragnarok X brings new life to one of the most iconic MMORPG franchises in gaming through modernized gameplay, whilst carefully preserving the charm and systems that long-time fans will remember. Players can choose from 6 iconic classes with deep progression paths,
yeah, these guys were gonna sponsor me too, but then they decided to not sponsor.
Beautifully updated 3D world that retains Ragnarok's signature art style. Ragnarok has a player-driven economy and skill-based guild versus guild battles, ensuring that strategy, teamwork, and character customization determine success rather than financial investment. Classic systems such as families, alliances, crafting, and boss hunting return, offering diverse gameplay options for all types of adventurers.
Yeah,
newcomers
we're gonna talk about SWOT Phase 9 after this video. Yeah, I'll talk about Phase 9.
Into advanced builds, competitive content, and more team-based strategies. What impressed me most about Ragnarok is how it offers various gameplay options. Whether you want to play on mobile, PC, or enjoy the diverse in-game activities like job transitions, fishing, and mining, there will be something for everyone. And Ragnarok X is now expanding to Western regions with plenty of content planned, including seasonal events, collaborations, and more. So whether you're a player from back in the day or brand new to Ragnarok, you can try it out for free today by checking the links down below. Many thanks to Ragnarok X for the sponsor today.
Thank you, Ragnarok. Even though you didn't sponsor me, I still appreciate
the idea of there being some kind of seasonal progression onto the Burning Crusade, which most people would take to mean after Season of Discovery has concluded. On the positive side, this would mean a definite future for seasonal servers, for something for them to continue onto and to keep growing. And I've seen this question crop up more and more, because Season of Discovery at this point in time has very much grown its own fan base, and with the season appearing to one way or the other draw to a close or slow down.
Like, I know a lot of people, they only want to play SOD. They're not interested in Mists of Pandaria Classic. They're not interested in Anniversary or TBC Anniversary, right? They're not interested in retail. Wow, they're just SOD enjoyers, man. I'm telling you, like, I mean, be like, oh no, true, there is, actually is. And we'll talk a bit about it later. But there's apparently been a potential Phase 9 that's gonna happen, and this like leak, the data leak within like the PTR update is confirming 4 times larger assets than Phase 8. And some people are like thinking it's gonna be SOT TBC, but like instead of going to TBC, TBC is gonna come to you. And then some people think there's gonna be a Phase 10 as well. I don't know. This is like crazy speculation. Relax. Yeah, I'm relaxed. You're relaxed. But it's pretty promising so far. All right, let's continue the video. That's my second pause. I got 3 more, okay?
We're still not entirely sure which. People, as they're playing an MMO, are naturally looking for what comes next. And that really is the big strength of there being potentially a TBC seasonal. You just know what will happen in the future. But I think there are a few more negative points which you could bring up for TBC seasonal, which would certainly put me off giving it a go. First things first, if developers were committing to this kind of idea, well, they'd have to keep developing it for however long it runs. This would mean easily over a year timescale of them messing with TBC class balance, when instead they could be working towards other things, which I think they already are. And if TBC seasonal happened, it would happen more or less at the same time as TBC's actual re-release. This would be an absolute disaster of a scenario to occur. You really can't offer 2 of the same expansion at the same time. That will divide the player base heavily and just annoy people. And Season of Discovery so far has been about 2 main things really: rebalancing classes and new content. So TBC class balance is already in a better place than Classic was, in that at least you want to bring a wide variety of specs to each raid. It has a bit of a class hierarchy where you have your tanks, your healers, your DPS, and then your DPS that you bring to make the DPS that do damage do more damage. I just call them support specs, such as Shadow Priest, Enhancement, Shaman, Boomkin, and so on. As for possible new content in TBC, it just doesn't exist in a way where it does for Classic. Classic has Gilneas, Grimbatol, High Greyjoy, Karazhan, the Scarlet Crusade, and many more different avenues that could be pursued for new content. Some of them have been. TBC just doesn't have this edge in terms of unexplored ground. During TBC, Blizzard really did everything that they wanted to do, and after they committed to expansions, they really packaged everything neatly together into one massive land, and then moved on to the next when they were done. Overall, TBC at a glance can seem like a natural follow-up to Season of Discovery, but in my opinion, it just doesn't make sense to do. Usually I'm pretty open-minded about updates to the game, but in this case, it's one of the few times where I would actively be against them doing this. In fact, I'll go above and beyond that and say Seasonal WoW doesn't belong in any other version of WoW apart from Vanilla. Only Vanilla has the Eastern Kingdoms and Kalimdor as the key world landmass.
Like, he brings a really good point. It's like, what is there to explore in the TBC world that we haven't explored, right? They would need to actually add literally landscapes, like a brand new zone, like added on top of the place, or enlarge a zone, or just add more NPCs. With the map of Vanilla, there's actually areas we've never been to because they're locked out, right? So that is definitely a disadvantage to TBC SOD. Unless they do a different take on it. And again, this data mining that's happened, it's suggesting a TBC SOD, or like the TBC at 60 and SOD. I don't know, honestly, dude. Wild speculation.
And it also has that volume of unexplored content that can really be built upon.
Be cool.
The timing with TBC Anniversary, I would imagine, would be a negative, hypothetically, were this to happen, and seasonal TBC would mean developers are just spending their time on something which ultimately I don't think would be super worth it, when instead they could be doing, you know, Classic Plus, for example, which I'm still very hopeful is being worked on in the background.
It's being worked on,
overall,
WillE, I know,
I think that seasonal content outside of Vanilla just doesn't work. Next up, we've got the Burning Crusade Hardcore. On the positive side, this will be new ground for hardcore characters, and when you hit Outland in lower levels of gear, it will be quite challenging and interesting to see which quests or elites are particularly challenging to players, where are the pitfalls, what zones are the most dangerous, which quests should you skip, and all that kind of stuff. It could definitely make for some good new content. There already were fresh hardcore realms released alongside Anniversary Realms 2, which could certainly progress to the Burning Crusade at the same time as regular realms. On the not so positive side for TBC Hardcore, while the vanilla content would be mostly unchanged, except it would kind of just be faster and easier. I don't think it would feel as though the game had actually started until you hit Outland, and that is a massive upfront time investment to really get into the new stuff. Also, the endgame content in heroic dungeons and raids will be considerably more challenging than anything Classic has had to offer.
Way harder.
On top of that, now you're playing a game with no world buffs, greatly reduced amounts of consumables, really high boss damage, threat mattering a lot more, and so on. Imagine if someone misclicks the cube on Magtheridon, it would be an absolute massacre. Saying that the Flask of Petrification does still exist in TBC, and as far as I can tell will work the same way, so there is still the get out of jail relatively free card. Saying that a bunch of guilds have cleared Naxxramas on Classic in Hardcore, and I bet when the Hardcore scene was taking off, a lot of people just thought it wouldn't have been possible. Overall, I don't imagine it's a massive time investment on Blizzard's part just to let Anniversary Hardcore realms carry over to TBC. I don't know how much of a desire there is from the player base for this to happen though. For me, I feel kind of, I mean, sure,
there kind of is. So Solar Poppin said he would like the idea of like a OnlyFans 3 to be like TBC Hardcore, but he knows Blizzard said they're not doing it, but he wants to see if they could do it, or they do TBC Hardcore with the add-on. The add-on that we used to use in the first Hardcore before the official Hardcore servers happened, where you just had death alerts. It's pretty much the same thing, right? But if you die, you can technically appeal. So if they do like a no appeals, or maybe you only appeal if you like get DDoS, then it would be like interesting. We'll see. I mean, I'm not gonna say no TBC Hardcore. I'm kind of like slightly fed up of vanilla Hardcore at this point. I've done it 5 times, literally. So it's kind of the same thing, right? But TBC Hardcore would be definitely different. So we never tried that one. We'll see if it actually happens.
just let it happen kind of thing. And to be honest, if it doesn't happen officially, players always have the option to go back to using the add-on for TBC Hardcore if enough people want it. Hardcore Realms exists because players made it happen with the add-on over on Classic Era. I'm sure they can do it again. I think the biggest barrier to entry are the 58 levels you have to do in vanilla before you actually get to step through the Dark Portal though.
Yeah, but
and
it's faster leveling in TBC
skip that journey because you can transfer from Hardcore to PvE if you die, and that would be abused by bots incredibly hard. So for Hardcore TBC, I kind of feel as though, sure, why not? Next, let's talk about a few potential changes to our standard TBC as we know it, and as it was released in 2021. It's an expansion that a lot of people really rate, that has a lot of strengths and some noticeable weaknesses too. Talking changes compared to our first TBC release, I think that there are 3 big things which dominate the conversation. How Shaman's Bloodlust or Heroism ability will work, Alton friendliness, and whether there will be TBC era realms. So in TBC, Bloodlust or Heroism is group-wide and there's no debuff upon use. This makes running somewhere between 5 to 7 Shaman kind of mandatory, as without their buffs, the game just really isn't that fun to play. It also leads to metagaming where people can swap Shamans into a group with their top DPS so they can chain cast terror.
What if Bloodlust was raid-wide, but only gave you a 3-minute debuff instead of a 10-minute sated debuff? That way you could have, if a fight is long, multiple Bloodlust still. Because I think if it gave you a 10-minute debuff, some bosses would be harder. I'm actually serious. Like, some of these fights, the way you deal with them in Sunwell, you give Bloodlust 4 times to the same group, you chain it, you know, right? So if you're gonna get one lust on everybody in a raid in Sunwell, I mean, I don't know. It could be more challenging because healer Bloodlust doesn't matter much. So I think having a 3-minute cooldown, not a 3-minute cool. What the fuck?
What's going on?
100 gifted subs? What? Espresso addict. That's 100 pauses, by the way. 100 pauses. Thank you so much, man. I really appreciate that. Can we get some hearts in the chat for Espresso Addict 2020? 100 gifted, man. I really appreciate that, man. Thank you. That's insane. I did not expect that. So, much love, man. Much love. So, guys, let me try to explain something. I was getting at something there. So, Bloodlust in TBC has a 10-minute cooldown. The actual ability, right? I don't think you need to change the cooldown of Bloodlust. So that way you still want to have multiple Shamans. So if you have 3 Shamans in the raid with a 3-minute sated debuff, they would actually be utilizing their Bloodlust, right? Let's say you kill the boss and you pull the next boss right away, you still have your Bloodlust ready. So it doesn't kill like the Shaman meta. You still could have party-wide totems anyway. But I think a 3-minute debuff would be better than a 10-minute debuff, right? There's more things you could do. You could also have it that when you kill a boss, all cooldowns reset instantly. I would not be against that. They did that in Wrath of the Lich King Classic. That was probably the best change by far in Wrath Classic. I mean, can you imagine if you killed a boss in Wrath Classic and none of your cooldowns reset, including Bloodlust and Sated, by the way, and then you pull the next boss, because in Wrath there were bosses right after each other, and you just have no lust on that pull. There's also another change they made in Wrath Classic where if you die, you don't lose your Sated debuff. Because a meta before was people would kill themselves after their Bloodlust ends, get res and Bloodlust again. So and you know what Blizzard said about this? You want to prevent this degenerate gameplay. And it was such a base post. I remember that still. So
now
it'd be cool.
€3. Be honest,
they did something similar in TBC.
How much sod gold did you sell for those 100 subs from Espresso? AKA upcoming sponsor POG.
Bro, you think that I'm sending my Season of Discovery gold to Espresso Addict 2020 and that's why he gifted 100 subs? No, alright? And why would I do that? Like, that's like I have to pay 35% tax on that. Twitch probably gets like a 30% cut too. I'm left with half of what he spent. That's some bad money laundering. Got it? God damn it! Caught you on a caught. All right, they ain't doing like that. No, but real talk, right? I think 2 changes are Raid Wide Bloodlust with a short sated debuff, and when you kill a boss, the sated debuff is gone. And the Bloodlust cooldown is potentially reset. That could be nice too. Not a massive deal, but it would be cool. Now, should they do Raid White Shaman Totems? That one, I don't know, guys. I don't know how you tackle that issue. Raid White Totems could be a bit stupid. I had like a weird idea, but it doesn't work. I was like, what if you had a Shaman Totem that affected the 10 players instead of 5 players? So let's say you have a Shaman in Group 1. Group 1 and Group 2 have the totems. And then a Shaman in Group 3 and Group 4 have the totems. I don't know how you would make that work, but it could be better. But yeah, Raid White Shaman Totems, that I don't know if I can get on board with it. I'm not like completely against it though. But definitely Bloodlust has to be tackled because Bloodlust is so much fun. It's amazing. And having Bloodlust only go to the party is just like everyone else gets to miss out on that fun, right? And I remember when I played the Arcane Mage and I played a healer, they would never give me Bloodlust. They would always Bloodlust the Warlocks. They would Bloodlust the Melees in 1 and 2. They wouldn't Bloodlust Group 4, which had the Shadow Priest and the Arcane Mage, or 2 Arcane Mages. And then Group 5 had the healers, right? So us Group 4 and 5, we were basically just missing out on the fun, is what I'm trying to tell you. So it will be kind of cool. Sorry for the long pause. Thanks again, Espresso, for the 100 gifted, by the way. And please would get the sub. I'm not going to pause this 100 times now, by the way. Relax.
Heroism for them, so they have 100% uptime. The easy change here is just adding the sated debuff after using Bloodlust and making it raid wide. This is basically how it works.
10 minutes is too long though.
So people don't have to worry about needing as many shaman, and it ensures that everyone gets heroism instead of this buff just being filtered down to a few players. And for what it's worth, if you think this is going to kill shaman class representation in raids and you'll only take 1 for Bloodlust, I strongly believe that will not be the case. Shamans are still a very valuable class, primarily in more of a supportive role, and their totem buffs are just way too good. On top of that, Resto Shamans are one of the top healers for the expansion. I still think even if Bloodlust is raid wide, you're going to be seeing 4 to 5 Shaman per raid, which is still a lot, but at least it's a bit more reasonable. And if you have fewer Shamans than that, at least you're not suffering from not having heroism. Now, in terms of alt friendliness, especially if Blizzard do TBC on a faster cadence, as they are doing with Vanilla Anniversary, they need to take a look at this really badly. There are 2 big barriers to entry for endgame content for alts in TBC. Those needing heroic dungeon keys, which are currently at Revered, and attunements. For the keys, you can pretty easily get to Honored during leveling through questing, dungeons, and just usual activities. So it seems as though it would be an easy compromise so people aren't having to access.
I think what you could do is you keep it at Revered, but then you can buy a key at Revered that can be given to your alts, and they can only use that key if they have Honored Reputation. So on your main, you need Revered. On your alts, you need Honored.
I think that's a nice compromise. The character to enter heroic dungeons. Attunements were something that were removed with patches
because if you make it that where alts don't need to attune at all, I think it would kind of kill the how do you say it? Like it would reduce the amount of players that want to do dungeons, right? So going from Revere to Honor is a lot, but it's like a massive that is like less than half the rep you need, so you know, because like it's 3k and then 6k you're honored instead of 3, 6, 12k. So I mean, if people complain about that, then I don't know, like what
expansion progressed. But if things are going to be moving faster, which I think they will be, you just want to get into the raids on your alts as soon as possible and not have to worry about doing them. I still think you'll have to do attunements on your main. I mean, it's a core part of TBC, you can't just delete it, but it should be more of a one-time thing, and then perhaps you have account-wide access. Alternatively, or maybe not just alternatively, but in addition, Blizzard could look to add significant Badge of Justice rewards to attunement quest lines to keep them active. At the end of the day, attunements keep a lot of varied content in the game active, and in that regard are really good. Imagine
Ooh, I have an idea, but I think you guys are gonna hate it. What if they added the tier sets on Badges of Justice vendors, but it's lower eye level than the tier available in the raid. Is that a good or bad idea, I think? So it'd be like 100 badges or what, some crazy number, I don't know, like, but it's lower eye level, so it's like kind of like LFR. You don't think that's good? Bad as usual? Okay, I'm just trying to think of a way to keep dungeons relevant. I'm sorry, okay? My bad, guys. I'm trying to get some Gamma Dungeon because I love the Gamma Dungeons in what they did in Cat and Rat. I'm trying to like sprinkle a bit of that, but yeah, my bad. Sorry, guys. All right, we keep raid logging. I get it.
You're playing an alt and say, for example, you could get 100 badges for completing the Kara achievement quest. Maybe that will be enough to make it feel as though it's worth your while. So in addition to getting a bunch of items from the dungeons, you can then go straight to the badge vendor.
This dungeon was so hard, guys. I would wipe on this boss all the time.
Gear up a bit faster and get into raids faster. If you remember back in Wrath Classic, Blizzard added emblems to the end of Wrath of the Lich King quest chain so that people felt incentivized to complete them fully. So there kind of is a precedent for them doing this. One way or another though, heroic keys and achievements do need some consideration this time around. Next point we have to talk about for TBC are Era Realms. So the first time around, TBC didn't get them, and I will be surprised if this time around they also don't. Era would happen when TBC will be coming to a close and would allow people to remain on a fully progressed TBC realm, where they could keep playing their characters or make new ones without the worry of the expansion progressing. I also reckon there will be people on Anniversary Realms who don't want to progress to TBC either, and will expect some kind of service to copy or transfer their character to the current Classic Era realms. I think this will also happen, and it just makes too much sense for it not to be a thing. The only thing you're losing out on is the LFG and dual spec transferring from Anniversary to Era, but otherwise it's a pretty similar ordeal. And beyond TBC finishing, there's also the possibility of Wrath Anniversary Realms 2, which I think will be announced at BlizzCon 2026, but again we'll have to see what happens here. For me, TBC still has some other noticeable and rather large issues, such as it feeling as though there really isn't much to do outside of raid or PvP, and that it's a super raid log expansion. Not that there's anything wrong with raid logging per se, it's just that sometimes I want to play my main, but I can't find a reason to do so. And I think quite a few of the caster spec rotations...
Someone said this in chat, and I like the idea. I think adding some kind of like gold reward to heroic dungeons would be nice. You know, like let's say when you kill the final boss, you get like a satchel. Every player gets like a satchel, and it contains maybe a few herbs, you know, mining nodes, stuff like that, right? And that way you could turn heroic dungeons into like a decent gold farm. Not the best, but something, right? Because I do feel like one of the best parts about TBC is dungeons, in my opinion, right? The dungeons are relevant. But at some point, you don't need them anymore. You don't need them, and then you are just raid logging. You log in, you raid, you log out. That's it. That's the whole game, right? Unless you do arenas. So it would be kind of cool if they could keep the dungeons a bit more relevant, right? Like, in my opinion, TBC, it started off fun, and then it got quite boring until Zulaman came out. Zulaman was like a breath of fresh air. It's like a 10-man raid, very rewarding, casual friendly. You could get into it, you know, attunements got easier to... it really picked up in Zulaman, then somewhat I also enjoyed. But yeah, I wish they would maybe take a look. There's just something, right? Something to keep the game populated with players, right? People having a reason to log in outside of their raiding hours is always great. Whether that's PvP or dungeons, whatever it could be, that'd be nice. I will now resume the video. I'm sorry for pausing a lot.
Are very bland for the most part. Yeah, I played a Warlock for a bunch of TBC, but addressing these would require much larger changes, which, to be honest, probably only would fit into a seasonal format, and we've covered my thoughts on that already. Overall, for the changes to our base TBC Classic game, it's A, will Blizzard change how Bloodlust or Heroism work to make them raid-wide or provide a debuff? B, will they look into the issue of alt friendliness of the expansion, given it's expected to be on a faster cadence? And C, will they commit to doing TBC Era this time around? And I suppose, what about Wrath Anniversary Realms too? Given that Blizzard have experimented a bit with changes for Anniversary Realms, such as the LFG and dual spec, both of which have been super well received by the way. I could see them testing the waters with additional changes, but as always, a lot of things have happened in this game just because people have asked for them. So if it's something you want, do be vocal
Damn, look
about
at all those
it.
players.
So those are just a few
Wow.
thoughts from me on the future
sick.
of Anniversary Realms heading on into TBC, as well as some additional game modes which may or may not happen. What do you think as far as TBC seasonal or hardcore though? Would you try them out? And would you want to see any realistic changes to the base TBC game as well? Let me know in the comments down below. And as always, thank you all so much for watching and listening in, and I'll see you all in the next one very soon.
Link it in the chat, guys. Hope you enjoyed that reaction there. I hope I did not pause too much, but that is the last video watching, right? Last video. Now